Hello, it's Chris Hall here from Charity Digital. Back on Thursday, the 7th of November 2019, we hosted our very first virtual conference, Digital Fundraising Day. We welcomed over 1,000 charity professionals for an informative day of webinars, podcasts, and videos that highlighted the importance and future impact of digital fundraising. And all the attendees that joined us on that day took key learnings back to their organisation to both kickstart and build on their fundraising initiatives. And now, with a recent outbreak of coronavirus, digital fundraising has become critically important to charity survival. And while making the rapid change to digital is a necessity, how can charities set themselves up to support the transition long term? We answered a lot of those questions back in November. And as we look to navigate the murky waters of COVID-19 work life, we want to share all those incredible webinar sessions with those of you who couldn't make it on the day. In these webinars, we've included the original Q&A recording for you, but if you do have any questions about any of the content, please pop them in the comment box below and we'll come straight back to you. Also, if there's something specific you're struggling with during these times, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We've provided a link in the description of this video below that you can ask us a question or even share your story with us. Thanks a bunch and enjoy the webinar.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Chevalier and I'm delighted to welcome you back to Digital Fundraising Day 2019. This is our 7th session of the day and our fourth webinar. I'm delighted to be joined in this session by Tom Dufresne of Lifeform. Tom is going to be talking about how to use social media to raise more funds. So I think that's a really important area. You know, we're all active on social media, but how do you actually turn it into something that's just more than chit chat, I guess. So lots of interesting content there. Just a couple of housekeeping points I want to raise. This session, like all our others, is subtitled. You can access that by clicking on the closed caption or CC button at the bottom of the screen. There will be time at the end of the session for some Q&A. And you can raise your questions at any point by clicking on the Q&A button and then typing it in. If we have more questions than we have time to answer, we'll then be jumping onto Facebook and answering those in the half an hour following the end of this presentation as well. So that's all I want to say for now. I'd like to hand over by introducing Tom.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. It's a real pleasure to be here. And today I'm going to be talking about a guide to using social media to raise more funds. But firstly, a little bit about me, who I am, and a little bit about Lifeform. So my name's Tom. I'm a relationship manager at Lifeform, working in our customer success team. I'm a community fundraiser by trade. I didn't do any digital for a long time, and then moved into digital fundraising to work for Blackboard, helping to launch Everyday Hero in the UK, which is a fundraising platform. Just after that, moving on to work at Just Giving, where I champion digital for really small micro charities who are looking to launch their own digital fundraising. As if that wasn't enough, I launched my own fundraising podcast because apparently 8 hours a day wasn't enough to be working in the sector. So I run that with a close friend of mine, and we have some really great fundraising professionals and guests. And I also talk about digital quite a lot on my own Twitter, so there really is no escape. So what we'll cover today, I've kind of broken this session down into some easily digestible steps. The first of which is why I use social media in fundraising. It seems like quite an important question to address. 5 tips to make fundraising more social. So I'll go through strategy, and how to build that out when you're looking at fundraising, when you're looking at digital as a fundraising channel. 5 tips for campaign success. That's specifically around best practices when you're posting content on social media channels. So kind of the best things to do there. 4 steps of your social supporter journey. So in the same way that we would experience any kind of fundraising journey, you need to look at social as providing that supporter journey. So I'll go through those 4 steps and some examples of what that looks like. And then I want to talk a little bit about the World Bicycle Relief, who have some great content. They're kind of one to watch. They go under the radar a little bit. So I'll talk a little bit about their content and why it's so good. So first of all, why social media? It feels like a good question to start with when we're talking about social media and digital fundraising. The most important thing is we look at the reason people are on social media in the first place. Often it's not to hurl abuse at politicians. Sometimes it's actually to gain information, and connection, purpose, and inspiration are kind of the three major reasons people look at joining social media. They want to be connected with like-minded people. They want to find a sense of purpose by championing causes that they support, and they want to be inspired by other people. And that's something that organizations like yourselves and people working in the charity sector actually have in spades. All that content is there. It's about repurposing that using social media channels. So looking at social media as a fundraising channel, I've just pulled out some key stats that kind of marry up what we were just talking about why charities should be using social media and leveraging the content they already have. 79% of charities overall said they've seen a social media as a successful channel for fundraising in the past year, and that's from the Status of UK Fundraising report, which was the IOF and Blackboard. Social media leading to increased donations. So charities using social media are 51% more likely to see an increase in donations. And that's now more than ever down to people assessing the impact of their donation by looking at the social media channels that the charities maintain, more and above their website or indeed their annual report. It inspires giving. It's the #1 communications tool that inspires giving, according to the Giving Trends report. So ahead of email and website, and that's really because of the really powerful storytelling tools that you have available on social. So that's a bit of context before we go into the tips. So 5 tips to making fundraising more social. These tips are going to be quite broad, but they're going to look at how you can harness digital fundraising as an income stream, being aware that it's one of the tools in your toolkit. And here are the components really that make up a good digital fundraising strategy. So as with any overall social media strategy, if you're on social, you can create a one-page document that focuses specifically on what you want to achieve out of social media, why you're on certain channels and why you're not on others. And setting your objectives is really, really important here. So donation goals in particular, but also engagement goals for your channels, if you want to grow followers, should be SMART objectives. SMART objectives, for anyone that don't know, are specific, measurable, they have to be achievable, they are realistic, you're not going too wild, and they're time specific. So for example, a Twitter goal might be you want to get the President of the United States to retweet your video on Christmas Day. It's a SMART goal. It's a bit of a strange one, but it is a SMART goal. It's very, very specific. It's measurable because you can see if that's happened or not on Twitter, and it's time sensitive. You've given yourself a deadline. So it's important to have donation goals that also reflect those SMART objectives. So give yourself time restrictions on those. So not just saying for our end of year campaign, we want to raise £5,000. You need to give yourself time restrictions that allow you to then measure those goals. So you can say we had a 50% success rate if we raised £2,500. So that's really, really important. Creating personas. Now, personas have been around in the marketing world for a long time, but they're also a crucial part of Silicon Valley and tech companies. And personas are essentially descriptions of people in your audience. So these people will have real names, real jobs, real aspirations, and real touch points of how they interact with you as a cause. It's important to have personas that anchor what you post on social, as well as elsewhere, to real people who are in your audience. So think about how you can develop those personas using something like a personas workshop, where you get people around one table talking about what your audience might be. And don't always make assumptions here. Look at demographic data from tools like Facebook to inform you about your supporters. A great case study there is Cats Protection, who have a really, really great understanding of their digital fundraising audience. So one to watch. Set team check-ins to keep track of your progress. Once you've set that strategy in motion, have regular check-ins. Create a plan of your activities and decide on the metrics. So you may use something like Google Sheets or Trello to create a plan of those activities, giving yourself your deadlines, making sure it's all linked back to those SMART goals that you established in the first place. Deciding on the channels. Now, this one is really, really important. As with traditional fundraising, some methods work better than others. For example, the DEC will always have emergency and will always have street fundraising because it shows that sense of urgency when there is an appeal. So like other methods, social channels are all different. It's important not to lump social into one kind of blob because it's you're not doing your audiences any favor. So appreciate that different channels have different demographics and you will attract different audiences across different channels. I've worked with many charities who say, we've got so many more followers on Twitter and so few on Facebook, even though we've launched these profiles at the same time. That's actually great audience insight. It tells them a lot about that audience. So don't make any assumptions about what your audience is doing. Don't bother stretching yourself too thin on platforms that you know your audiences aren't on. Think about how often you want to post about your fundraising campaign on these various channels, making sure that you're not just constantly posting about a fundraising ask and you're finding a balance between your general posts and awareness raising posts. And I'll talk about what that means a little bit later with some examples as well. Tailor your messaging. This is really important to any email nerds out there. You'll know that segmenting your data and tailoring your message really depends on your target audience. The same applies for your social media and your social media strategy. If you're looking to raise funds on social, you have different channels, different audience, and you need to try out different messaging. As we're rolling into a general election campaign in the UK, you'll be seeing a lot of political adverts. Whilst these are paid, the lessons are still the same. These ads will be testing different variants to see what messaging, imagery, and content works well. Now, you don't need to test to death, but figuring out different messaging will help you understand your audience and the channels that work well for you. If you're not getting good engagement on Instagram for your campaign, pull it. If you're thinking about using TikTok, don't, because unless you know the reason you're doing it, you'll stretch yourself too thinly on channels that don't matter to your audience. Focus on the impact. Don't just ask for money. Seems kind of obvious, but often we get into the bad habit of doing that as fundraisers, especially in the end of year campaigns, and highlight the impact of each donation. Keeping everyone updated with the campaign's progress as well is also a great way to subtly ask without directly asking. I have a stat from a survey here. I think it was a Blackboard survey of social media users who donate. 56% said that compelling storytelling is what motivated them to make the donation. So they were looking on social media channels to look for compelling stories before choosing or not to make a donation. So we'll talk a little bit about what that means as well. Involving your supporters. If anyone doesn't have an ambassadors program or champions program, they might be advocates, whatever you may call them. They are your loyal supporters. They might be your volunteers or your regular donors. Consider a close Facebook group for them to make them feel involved in an exclusive environment, and create a champions toolkit. So you can share copy and images with that team, allowing them to amplify your existing campaigns as and when they go out, and encourage them on a kind of one-to-one basis in that group, however you want to group them together, to engage through different challenges. How many people can they invite to the group who meet your criteria, or how many times can they share your message? So think about your most loyal supporters and how you're talking to them and how you can turn them into your champions. 5 tips to make your campaign succeed. So these are all about direct, tangible storytelling tips that look at posts that we found on social and what makes them successful. Always have one call to action. Now, I will go against conventional wisdom sometimes, but this is conventional wisdom, and one call to action is really, really important. It may sound obvious, but how often do we have one call to action in our storytelling posts? This is a good example from Christian Aid, where they've shown the need and then asked people to stand with them. So they're bringing people with them with this post, and some great storytelling by leading with a kind of headline stat. And note too how the link, you wouldn't know it, takes you through to a donation page, but they don't explicitly ask for a donation in this tweet. Instead, the language is compelling enough to make you want to click. When you do, you'll find the story of this individual, and you'll also learn more about their harvest appeal, and how your donation can make a difference to this year's harvest appeal. So they're telling great storytelling through impact, showing the impact of their previous challenge, and highlighting how you can how you as a donor can make a difference to this year's appeal. Make a considered donation ask. When you have a really compelling story, when you're reading a really compelling story, and as charity fundraisers, we're constantly exposed to these, and sometimes we don't appreciate the value that's in them. It's really easy sometimes just to add a donation ask and put that out there as one solitary post on social media. But we can't always be asking our supporters for money, and I'll talk a little bit about how you take them on that supporter journey a bit later on. So think about using or even saving that precious ask for a very specific campaign that your supporters can really get behind, whether it's an end of year appeal, whether it's a Giving Tuesday campaign, whether it's a capital appeal for a really, really tangible thing. Save that donation ask for one where you know it can make a real difference. So in this example, Street Child UK are asking their supporters to donate to a specific campaign called Mind the Gap, which helps ensure more children around the world have access to high quality education. And this ask is more compelling because they've saved it using the Donations Doubled campaign powered by UK Aid. So they're really, really focused on getting more impact out of that. Consider your supporter journey, and we'll talk a little bit about what that journey is in the next section. But as with any story, it should take people on a journey. And as we have your online fundraising supporter journey maybe set up, you may have a great email supporter journey set up. Sometimes it's important to think about how that applies to your social media. If you're painting effective stories, it's not just about one post on social media every now and again. It's about composing a narrative. So you might start with a post on social media and then direct people to a landing page on your website where there's more information or stories, or a piece of content like a video, which is much more engaging. You might send a series of emails with a clear supporter journey for them to take action at the end, such as signing a petition, making a donation, or becoming a volunteer. So always consider that your supporter journey now includes social. It's the kind of the most distant part of, from us, from our organization. Email is very close and still has a really powerful role to play. But social media is really at the front line these days, more and more. Using images and video to drive action. So this is really, really important, and often we get into the habit of putting a donation ask in our social media copy, but because of the restrictions around sharing things on social, the formatting is generally the same. So think about how you can use high quality images and video that drive action towards a certain call to action. So in this example, a great high quality image that has a very bold call to action on a contrasting color. Think about how people scroll on social media. And this image is what stands out and what people will read the image copy before they will read the content copy. And again, anchor that back to your personas, the people that you know are using your content, people who are kind of digesting your content. Maybe, for example, you're like Cats Protection and you know that your content is used by people who are on iPads quite a lot. So you have more screen real estate to show them a bigger high quality image. So think about how your audience may be consuming the stuff that you're posting, and always have them in mind before you share something. And last but not least, in this section, involving your supporters. So I talked a little bit about your advocates, your champions, whatever you may call them. One way to make your storytelling more actionable is by asking people to share their own experiences on social. So Organizations often call this story banking, acquiring engaging content that is user generated. And that is really powerful on social media. People respond way more to individuals than they will ever respond to organizations, regardless of how in touch they are. So think about how you can ask the right questions on social, whether that's through polls or through story banking, that allows your audience to share their experiences. This gives you great user-generated content, as I said, that you can use again and again throughout your campaign. And again, think about existing stories that you may already have, whether those are case studies or stories that you hear about from people who work in your services that just kind of get talked about but never really get compiled anywhere. That stuff is really, really great social content. If you anchor it right back to what we were talking about at the beginning, people go on social media to feel inspired by the activities of other human beings. So you may have some great stories that are stuck in your head that if they came out and were put on social, whether through posts or videos or images, would be a great way to start moving people through the supporter journey. And speaking of your supporter journey, here are the 4 steps of the social supporter journey that I wanted to talk about. And these 4 steps are really, really crucial in moving people through your social media fundraising journey. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the steps and show you examples for each one of these. So identification, engagement, solicitation, and acknowledgement. In order to translate that, that's finding new supporters on social, engaging them with great content that isn't asking for a donation. Solicitation is asking for that all-important donation, or it's asking people to sign a petition, volunteer. They need to give something back. And then acknowledgement is making them really, really aware of the difference that they've made and thanking them. So identification, finding new donors, reaching them where they are, allowing you to raise awareness about your work and build a relationship with your audience. So don't make the ask your very first message and don't make it the most often message. Awareness is a really strategic part of your fundraising campaign. So this example here from Child Bereavement UK, they're talking about raising money and awareness, and they're specifically having a very nice call to action that's about a free fundraising pack. So it's an identification piece. The people that go on and download that fundraising pack are identified as potential new donors and fundraisers. Engagement. So engagement posts are posts that allow you to engage your current supporters. So building a long-lasting relationship, keep them interested in your cause. You can see this post from Teenage Cancer Trust it's a great quality image, but it has no call to action. It's just engaging content that allows people to share and amplify without having to have any expectations on them. So join in on awareness days and be social. You know, things like polls on Twitter, broadcasting your message on certain awareness days is a great way to stay involved in that conversation. And solicitation. So this is a great example from Rays of Sunshine. They've got a really strong, direct and emotive message, and they are telling a story. So they're telling a story here specifically about one of their campaigns, and they've used a really great behind the scenes photo to show their followers, their audience, an insight into their office, an insight into the human people that are running the organization, and giving people an option to fundraise to donate online or donate directly via text. So it's a really, really great piece of content that, again, is that kind of behind the scenes storytelling. So think about how you can leverage the existing content that you already have to start soliciting donations and other things people can give you via social media. Another great example here is Street Child. So they sometimes you may need to create a sense of urgency. So they've used this copy to create a sense of urgency around the donations. So they've said 3 hours left, donate before midnight. This is using a really high quality image with a really, really clear call to action. So again, sometimes urgency is really, really great, and it allows you to quickly get a message out. And think about how you can tweak the copy in this circumstance to make it seem more urgent, to get people to act quickly. And acknowledgement is a really, really important part. It's the final part of the journey. Thank everyone who has supported your campaign. So regardless of when it's starting, level the playing field and treat everyone equally. Shares, mentions, and donations should all be treated equally. Anyone that's contributed in any way, show your appreciation through really, really simple graphics, sharing the impact that people have had, making sure that anyone that has donated is getting a separate, maybe a more thorough thank you via email, for example, but making sure that on social you are really championing the people who have decided to support you, however they've decided to do it. I wanted to quickly look at a charity case study, as I mentioned before, just a couple of images and a couple of pieces of content that we can share to give you some inspiration from World Bicycle Relief. So some really great posts that they had at the end of Bike Month, using really, really powerful imagery to share their impact. So showing off how they've almost hit this milestone with a really, really simple call to action. So a great example of how you can use a simple image editing software to create a really high impact image. They've also been great at producing some high quality videos. And again, high quality videos don't need to break the bank these days, which have shown really, really great storytelling. So I'll make sure I share these links afterwards so people can watch some of their high quality videos and get some inspiration about how great storytelling can be used to solicit donations, especially on social. So the first example, both examples, were both via their Facebook page. And thirdly, they've got rid of the friction of fundraising by encouraging people to set up fundraising pages using Facebook fundraisers. So they can donate, but they can also quickly set up these great fundraising appeals, again, leveraging those high quality images and sharing those fundraisers in a really frictionless way, getting people to engage and start fundraising themselves. Once they've been on that storytelling journey, it's really easy for them to then set up a fundraiser or indeed donate directly. So what are my key takeaways for today? We've learned that social media, like any fundraising and marketing channel, you need a strategy and you need to understand your audiences. So SMART goals are really, really important. But if there's one thing I would say as the headline is think about your audience in a personas workshop. Get the people who work with your audience and your supporters on a daily basis to really hone down some great personas. Follow the 5 key tips to making sure your fundraising ask isn't diluted. So those 5 key storytelling tips on social posts. And ensure you have a fundraising journey mapped out for your social. So make sure that fundraising journey is really clear, and make sure it's not just part of your email journey. Make sure it's really intertwined. So making sure that once people have given, they're on a different journey, but the people who are experiencing your social media channels are also on one. And test and learn. You won't get it right the first time. The more you test and learn and understand your audience, the more you can tweak that. Understanding those personas is really key to sharing the right content on the right channels. And using Lifeform, again, you can sign up to Lifeform on the link below and create really strategic social media fundraising campaigns. You can plan your fundraising stories using our story builder. You can collaborate with your team, with multiple users building posts, and you can tell your story using our guides and our templates. We also have a whole bank of royalty-free images that you can use to really test content and see which resonates with your audience. And that's me.
Okay. Brilliant. Thank you very much, Tom. Some fascinating content there. If you want to raise questions, just click on the Q&A button and enter it there. What we'll do is we'll answer some of them now, and then we'll be taking the rest onto our Facebook events group after the session. So first question from Sam. Sam works for a children's hospice and reports having significantly higher levels of reach and engagement on Facebook posts without a link. Rather than those with a link as a CTA. And the question is, how do you strike the balance between those two things? When should you have a CTA and when not? And I think the point here is the algorithms filtering out those with the links more.
Yes, absolutely. And the shorter the post, the better these days. Facebook allows you to write really, really long posts, but actually what we've seen is engagement really drops off if a post is above kind of 80 characters or so. So really keeping that quite low, using a high quality image, and again, being infrequent when you are adding links. But as I talked about earlier, making sure that when you are asking for a donation, if you're going through that kind of solicitation stage, whether it's a donation, sign up to volunteer, making sure that's infrequent, but when you are doing it, it's at the right time and the right content.
Yes. And Nora works for a small anti-torture charity and been using social media to raise funds. They're 60% of the way towards their target, but seem to have reached fundraising fatigue with their supporters. So what would you say are the key tips to re-engage supporters to donate?
Well, that sounds like it's already a great campaign, Laura. So that's really good. 60% isn't too bad. Again, thinking about your SMART goals, making sure that the goals that you set right at the beginning were achievable in the first place. I think that's a really, really important thing to remember. Go back through using the analysis tools already there. Go back through the posts that you have shared. Look at the ones with the highest engagement and see how you can repeat some of those in future. Making sure that you remove the ones that haven't had that kind of high engagement. So it's that kind of test and learn approach.
Yeah. And Kate has a Facebook audience that's really mainly aimed at service users. In this case, adults with mental health issues. So they wouldn't be looking at them to donate. So how should she start posting content that does ask for donations?
Well, I think if you're looking at, if that's your situation, Kate, then I would think about exploring how you could boost posts on Facebook. Using paid is a great way to reach a new audience, and experimenting with paid can be really, really low cost. Especially if you don't think your audience is necessarily appropriate, then think about how you can start acquiring a new one, and paid might be a good place to start.
And what are your favorite social media campaigns?
Personally, my favorite social media campaigns, well, World Bicycle Relief had that great campaign that I just showed there earlier, which was fantastic. Other fundraising campaigns, I mean, the most powerful ones I've always seen on social are the ones that are really embedded with user-generated content. So things like December, November, and now allowing people to create their own content and share it online. I think that's really, really powerful. And anything with cats as well, cat protection really gets me. So
yeah, you mentioned them a couple of times, noticed that. And we've actually got them on the next piece of content as well. Excellent. But I'll go into that in a minute.
Wasn't planned, but good segue.
In terms of measuring engagement, how do you suggest that people best do that?
So engagement is an interesting one. So if you sign up and use Lifeform, you can track engagement on your posts via Lifeform, but also natively on other social platforms, you can see how engagement is tracked. So normally likes and shares, but also comments on platforms like Facebook. And also link clicks form part of engagement. So some platforms will blend those into one rate. Some platforms will split them out. So having engagement in your mind as a concept, and know that engagement on different channels means different things.
Brilliant. Now, sadly, we're out of time for the audio questions. So we are going to go down to the Facebook group. Give us about 5 minutes for that. And with that, I want to sign off. Hope to catch some of you very soon in the Facebook group. Thank you and goodbye.